Talking with the Experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name is Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com, and Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners, and you can find it on all good podcasting streams and on YouTube. And my guest today is Eesha, and Eesha is going to actually introduce herself because I got a bit lazy today and wasn't quite sure. So we're going to talk about quantum business. Thank you for joining me, Eesha, and please tell me a little bit more about what you can provide to our listeners.
Beautiful. Yeah. So my name is Eesha Patel and I'm the founder of Origin Activation. I help business owners to up-level their capacity to make more profit, more impact with flow and ease through helping them really connect into what we call the quantum field. And we're going to dive into that a little bit today in the conversation of how it's so important for business owners to actually have spiritual mentoring backing the work that they're doing so that they can have maximum impact.
Ah, beautiful. That's a great introduction. Thank you for doing that. You did it much better than I would have been able to. Anyway, tell me how this can help business owners in the long run, to run their businesses and to, progress.
Yeah, beautiful. Let me give you a bit of context. I imagine there's some listeners on here that may not know what I mean by quantum business. So when I speak about quantum business, it really is this idea that your business is more than just something that exists in this world. And we are diving very esoteric very quickly in this today, because I feel like, it's really important to understand that this world is not just in the physical, that there is actually an energetic component to everything that we do. And sometimes business owners can get really lost in the world of sales and marketing and strategy without necessarily bringing in aspects that are just as equally important, or in my opinion, even more so, which is the energetic side of things. So when we talk about quantum business, what we're really talking about is how we are connecting to the energetic space that creates all things. So let's just take a step back and let's adopt the idea. And whether you agree with this or not, if you're listening in, just pretend for the purposes of this podcast that you agree with this idea that everything is energy. So if you can say, yes, okay, I agree with that, and you can accept the fact that everything sits in the energetic space, what happens from there is that you end up tapping into a space in your business that is actually in the energetic spectrum. So you might think of your business as, okay, my business has clients, my business has marketing plans, my business has strategy, and my business has staffing, and my business has, team leaders, and like all the things that you have in your business. And that might be all the components of the business. But the big thing that people fail to recognize is the component of the energy. Now, if you can understand that everything is energy and accept that to be truth, then the question you ask yourself is, okay, if my business is an energy, perhaps it can be true then that my business is its own creation, has its own energy, and is actually its own energetic entity. So if you can then accept that to be true, then you start asking a different set of questions. One of the first questions I get my clients to ask is, if your business were an energetic entity that was actually outside of you, but still connected, kind of like how you have a child, like a parent is connected to their child, but the child is still their own person. Right? Even when the child is in the womb, the child is part of you, but it's still its own person. And so in that same sense, your business is its own energetic entity, but it is connected to you because you are the one that is nourishing it, you're feeding it, you're putting all the time and energy and things into your business. But this is the thing, right? If your business is its own creation, can it have its own direction and its own way that it wants to exist in this world? And this is where, when I start asking business owners to tap into that frequency, suddenly it's not about you as the business owner controlling the business or making all the decisions around the business. You can actually handle and leverage with your business by tapping into the energetic component that is the business, that is its own individual entity. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I got lost a little bit. Then you started to explain it to me, and I thought, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Sometimes businesses just seem to take off on their own without the business owner having done anything. So, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Totally.
Right. And I've absolutely had that experience, because for me, my business was something that was very organic. To this day, I don't actually have a business plan in the business, and I'm a little nervous to publicly state that. But this is the thing, right? When I first started my business, it was actually something that came through me, and it was something that I felt like I had to bring into this world. But at the time, even I didn't know what it was going to become or the scope of that. Now, fast forward 5.5 years, and I've had the privilege of helping over 10,000 people, in the space of spirituality. And I've built a multiple six-figure business as a spiritual mentor. Back when I first started, everybody thought I was crazy. And all I wanted to do was teach people how to meditate. That's literally everything I cared about. I just wanted to teach people how to meditate because meditation really helped me. And it was something that brought me a lot of connection, and I had a lot of passion around it. And so the inquiry I put out was, how do I live a life where I can just teach people how to meditate? And the other thing I asked was, if I'm going to do this and be in service, and I believe, businesses really, they're always in service to their community, or at least I feel like the good ones should be. It's not about the profit. It's not about how much money you make. It's actually about what impact are you having on the world. So for me, the impact that I wanted to have on my community when I first started was creating a space where people could come together. So my first business was actually a studio. It was a physical space where people would come in for meditation classes, and then we had yoga and we had Tai Chi and we had all the good things, sound healings, all of that. And so I created a physical space that people could come into, where we were creating community, we were creating high vibrations, we were creating connection, and people were ultimately learning how to connect with those inner parts of themselves. Now, that first business of mine did end up going over the six-figure mark, and it took a while to get there. But the way that I did it, and what made me, I guess, set me apart from all the other studios around me, which all failed. I watched a lot of studios fail in the 5.5 years that I was in that suburb. The difference, I think, for me was that I wasn't controlling my business. So every day I used to wake up and I would go into my studio and I would say, what do you need from me? And that was an absolute game changer.
Oh, well, maybe I might try that.
I recommend everybody try that. There are definitely some tools that I offer people for this, in terms of, firstly, it's a mindset shift. Firstly, it's understanding that you don't have to be the be all and the end all of your business. And again, I think this is a massive mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make. And I get it. I've been there. I used to think that as the boss of my business, or as like the owner of my business, that I had to know it all and I had to have it all together. The truth is, I didn't know anything and I didn't have anything together. I was just stumbling along in business. And I think most entrepreneurs can relate to this. We have no idea what we're doing, right? You go through one step at a time and you kind of hope that one thing works, and things are bound to fail. I think if you think that your journey of entrepreneurship is going to be something that's just going to be a straightforward road, you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur. The whole journey of being an entrepreneur is you kind of take a step forward and you hope that something will work, and then you almost account for like 50% of your actions failing, which I know, in companies like Google, they actually have that in their plan. If you're working at Google and you're part of their innovation team, and you're actually the person that's part of, creating new ideas or bringing new ideas to the team, they assume that a certain percentage will fail. And if they're not hitting that fail rate, they actually say to their employees, you're not thinking big enough, you're not thinking crazy enough. So wow. if 25% of your ideas are not failing in your business, you're actually not doing it right at all. You're actually playing too small. Yeah. So knowing that as an entrepreneur, it's like, cool. Can you have the bravery to do the crazy things? Can you have the bravery to tap into what the business wants? Can you give your business the time and the space to the freedom to grow into what it wants to be in such a way where you're not controlling it based on what you think you know? Because I can tell you right now, as an entrepreneur, if you only take actions based on what you think you know, you're not going to get very far, because your business has a potential that is further, and the vision is bigger a lot of the time than what we even comprehend. So this is where, when you go quantum, you're not just tapping into and utilizing the resources and what you already have in your brain so far. You're actually tapping into what is in the potential field, and what is in the potential field is beyond what you can think of right now. And the only way to tap into that is actually through having a solid meditation practice and through understanding who you are as a spiritual being, which then allows you to connect into that space of oneness or consciousness or whatever it is you want to call it, so that you can achieve and receive a vision that's bigger than anything your tiny little mind could have come up with.
Yeah. So what are some tips on how they could reach this place?
Right. So I do have a 3-step system that I recommend for all people that are starting out in business. I call it the alignment map. And I do actually have a 90-day process that I take people through this. There are 3 key components to it. The first stage of the alignment map is you have to actually get yourself calm. The calm stage is vital. And I see so many entrepreneurs skip this. If you're an entrepreneur and you're in absolute hustle mode and you're just trying to do all the things and you're working the 80-hour weeks and you're not seeing results, it's because your body's in stress. you cannot achieve results without being in a place of calmness in your body. So one of the best tools for that, again, is through meditation, something simple like mindfulness, a simple breathing practice, just going out into nature, grounding yourself. And this is where the self-care part of this becomes so, so important as an entrepreneur, right? To be a business owner, and again, I'm speaking from experience here, I have absolutely been in the point of burnout because I just thought that by working harder and doing all the things, I would get the results that I wanted. And what actually happened was my nervous system got completely burnt out. I wasn't useful to anything or anyone. And all I wanted to do was sleep and give up and cry and didn't want to do my business anymore. So step one is actually letting yourself calm down, whether it be going to a float tank or getting a massage or taking 5 minutes to just meditate every day. It's such a vital part of getting your nervous system into a point where you can actually make decisions with clarity. We all know that when you're stressed out, and this comes from way back in the day where, if you're in the bush hunting and gathering or collecting, if you're a female, whatever the traditional roles might be, if you were in those olden days and there was a tiger chasing you, you would not be thinking, hang on, I need to pause, I just need to breathe and make a clear decision. You would think, shit, I need to run. Like, you'd be running for the hills, and your instincts will take over and your adrenaline will kick in and your cortisol goes up, and and your whole body just goes into that fight or flight mode. Now, the unfortunate reality is that most people right now actually are thriving in that space 24/7. So you think about, corporate workers who are stressed or business owners who are hustling and stressed out. That stress is actually not conducive to making clear decisions, because the decisions you make while you're being chased by a tiger are only going to get you out of the immediate survival. They're not actually going to get you a long-term 5 or 10-year plan. So taking that time to be calm is an absolute vital first step to creating that alignment that you need in your business. Once you have that calm, that's when we move into the second phase. And the second phase is the connection phase. Now, again, I see entrepreneurs skip this because they just want to get to the part where they're doing their hustle and they're doing their marketing, they're doing their sales, and they think it's going to work. The connection is the part where you take the time to connect with your intuition. Now, if your body is stressed out, your connection to your intuition is not going to be on point. So again, you have to do step one before you can do step two. So once you take the time to be calm and your nervous system can actually handle that, what happens from there is your body is allowed to receive that intuitive guidance, which we all have. Everybody has that innate intuition within themselves. It's just you got to give yourself the time and the capacity to sit and listen to those tiny little whispers. I speak about this a lot, and I often ask people the question, have you ever been in a room where you can just tell that somebody's had an argument like 5 minutes before you walked in, or something's happened in that space and you just feel the vibe is not right? Yeah. So that's an example of how your intuition is telling you something, and what it's actually doing is it's reading the energy field without you being consciously aware of it. If you're tuned into energy, then you can notice it and you can go, oh, I'm feeling the emotion of anger in this room, or I'm feeling, something in this space, and you can get a clear read on what that is. But at the most basic level, it's an intuitive feeling. So the same feeling and that same process can be applied to your business, because your business, again, is its own creation, its own entity. So when you take the time to be calm in your body and you connect into your business, what happens is your business gives you that guidance. And then you can receive that intuitively, and you can read from the energy field of the business what that actually needs. And that's how you make decisions from a space of connectedness that are more intuitive. I can speak from experience and say that I have, I've had times where I've used absolute strategy, and there's nothing against strategy. I think it's definitely a twofold approach here. But in saying that, when I have intuitively implemented strategy, what's happened is that strategy has just gone so much further for its buck. So I could put out one post that is intuitively guided at the right time, in the right moment, in the right frequency, that ends up making me thousands and thousands of dollars in sales, versus me just doing posts every 5 minutes because I feel like that's what we need to do. And that's just wasting my time and energy. Yeah. Right. So one intuitively aligned post goes a lot further than 100 non-aligned posts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yes, I agree with that. I find it a bit of a challenge to post as often as they say you're meant to post. Right. I think because it's just wasting my time.
It is. And this is where, there is a strategy, but there's also the intuitive component. And really, you have to weave between the worlds so that you can find that nice midpoint, so that you are implementing strategy, but that there's intuition backing that, so that you can have maximum efficiency in every single thing that you put out, because energy is something that is very valuable. I'm very mindful of my energy and I protect my energy very well, in the sense that if I put an action out into the universe, I know that it's done in a certain flow, so that there's very little wasted actions and wasted effort in my business. And that's all because I implement this alignment map system of calm and connection, which brings me to the next point, which is all to do with clarity. Now, clarity is the part where you start receiving with clear focus what it is that you're supposed to do. Now, there's nothing worse, and I say this because a lot of my audience is often people that are more in the spiritual space starting businesses. And I say to these people that, if you're just meditating all day, every day, and you're not having the clarity and then acting on that, then that's also equally as useless, right? Yeah. So if you're just doing 1,000 actions a day and there's no intuition backing that, that's not helpful. If you're sitting there meditating in the Himalayas for 20 years, expecting the world to change, that's also not helpful. So where is the fine line in the middle? And to me, it's implementing the calm, connection, clarity, the alignment map process, because what those 3 steps lead to is that when you have that intuitive guidance and then you're clear on your action steps, you do the part which is take aligned action. So you have the being part, which is the part where you're sitting in meditation and you're receiving the guidance. Then you have the doing part, which is the action. And it's only when you put the being and the doing together and you take aligned action that is backed by intuition that allows you to see results in your business that are like quantum leaps. And this is where people say to me, Eesha, it's like your business is magic. And I'm like, no, it's not magic. I'm just very aligned, because I don't waste energy in my business. I take actions when I feel like taking actions, and I equally take the time to rest. And so when I'm resting, I'm recharging, and when I'm acting, I'm doing it in a way where the entire universe is backing that. So there's very little wastage in the business from an energy perspective.
Yeah, a lot of people would, I guess, not understand what you're trying to. They just think that it's all woo-woo stuff, which it is fair enough. That's their beliefs. However, as a believer in energy and all things energy. Whatever it is, it can be very helpful for your business to get it to move forward, because if you're not doing things that are good for yourself, then you obviously can't do things that are good for other people.
Right, exactly. And I think it's huge for entrepreneurs to realize that first and foremost, they do have to look after themselves. They do have to take that time for themselves so that they can be in that alignment, because there's nothing worse than making decisions and taking actions based on lack, based on stress, based on survival. It's those moments where you feel like, oh, you just don't have the time to have 5 minutes to breathe, that you actually need to take the 5 minutes to breathe, because that's how you then get the results that are much more in alignment with that calmness that you're trying to create. I'm also a huge believer in law of attraction, in that the frequency that you put out is the frequency that you get back. So if the actions in your business are fueled by a frequency of stress and a frequency of hustle and a frequency of lack of abundance and all that, then the actions taken from that space will create more of that energy. So when you take the time to just breathe for 5 minutes and you ground yourself and you calm yourself down, then this new frequency has the opportunity to create a new experience. So if you are trying to get to that point of financial freedom and having a business where you're only working, say, 20 hours a week and still making multiple 6 or even 7 figures, then what happens is you can't get to that frequency until you actually have the feeling of that now. Right? In the quantum field, and particularly when it comes to transformational work, the fastest way to create the reality that is in the future and bring it into the now is by embodying the emotion of that right now. So if your future reality is to be financially free and to spend more time with your family, to have more time with your kids, to be able to go to the beach during the week and do all the things that you want, then it's really important to actually spend the time to tap into what does that feel like. Because when you have achieved that goal that you're trying to achieve and you have that freedom, that version of you isn't acting all stressed and running around like a headless chicken. That version of you is actually very calm, is very composed, is very, centered in who they are, because they are not acting from a place of stress. But here's the catch-22, right? That feeling of that future version of yourself can actually be embodied in the present. So when you embody that feeling of calm in the present from that version of you that already has it, then that's how you actually create it. And so the feeling of that needs to be embodied in the physical body in this moment right here, right now. And it's that part that changes that then allows the reality to shift, not the other way around. So you don't wait until you have what you want to be calm. You be calm first, and then you create what you want.
Yep, that's very true. It's but it is a catch-22, because sometimes you get so busy having a life that you, oh God, a cat. A cat's coming to visit you, Eesha. That you forget that you need to calm. You need to have that feeling of that you've already got what you have. And if you keep thinking in a world of lack and hustle and bustle, then that's just what you're going to attract.
Yeah, exactly. I get cats visiting me a lot, by the way. They always come say hi whenever I'm doing these things.
Yeah, she's it's nearly her dinner time, so she's coming to say hi. Feed me, Mum.
I love that.
So, Eesha, have you got any words of encouragement for our audience?
Right. I think, for people that are just starting out in business, I would say one of the biggest tips is that one is, have a realistic approach as to what it's going to be like. I think it's important to not be naive in that to be an entrepreneur is not an easy journey. Anyone who says otherwise is feeding you lies. Like, I mean, I've not met a single entrepreneur who hasn't gone through all the challenges and what it takes to find that financial freedom. What I can also say, though, is a message of hope in that with that perseverance and determination and the right tools and the right guidance, that you can actually get there. If I can give any one tip, and this is my absolute, I would not live my life without this, it's don't try and do it alone. Get yourself a coach, get yourself a mentor, get yourself somebody who has been there before you, because the things that you don't know are actually hurting your business, and they're hurting your capacity to live the life that you want to live. Now, unfortunately, we're not taught in school how to live a life of freedom. We're taught how to just be part of the system and to live it, in the 9-to-5 job. So if you've decided that that's not the life that you want, and you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to live on your own terms and work your own hours, at the start, you're probably realistically going to work even more hours than if you had a job. But on the other side of that, and with the right guidance and the right coaching, you can very quickly transition into a space where you do have the life that you want, and you can actually live the life where you're not working all day every day, where you can just, make choices in your day to go and do the things that you want while still making a steady income, looking after yourself and making impact in the world. But trying to do it alone, I think you're nuts, to be honest. I think
you're crazy. Anyone's crazy. I resisted having a coach for a very long time. And I decided last year that, I really just needed to have one, because it was challenging. And I was so looking inside the box instead of looking outside the box, because, I just thought, I could do it on my own, but it's not easy. And certainly, having someone
we just get in our own ways, right? I mean, we are ultimately our biggest obstacles, and you can't see your own blind spots. And I say to everyone, actually, to be successful in business, you need both a business coach and you need a spiritual mentor, because when you have the two together, the business coach will help you with the strategy and some of the mindset, personal development, but the spiritual mentor will actually help you to get connected to the quantum field. And when you have the two together, I have seen so much magic happen. If you're missing either one of those pieces, then you're not actually operating at your full potential. And you're leaving money on the table, you're leaving impact on the table. And at the end of the day, if you are a big vision entrepreneur who wants to really create something in this world, you need to be tapped into that inner space so that you can create from a place that is divinely aligned, and that's actually not sucking your soul like a lot of people's careers are at the moment. Yeah,
sucking of one's soul is not, it's sucky.
Yes, I think we all speak from experience when we say that.
We absolutely do. All right, Eesha, have you got anything else you'd like to add? If you've got where can people find you?
Yeah, so it's eeshapatel.com, EESHAPATEL.com. You can just find me there. I actually teach this, so I've got a modality, origin activation, and I do work with a lot of high-performing, very big vision entrepreneurs who really want to tap into that spiritual space and get more tapped into the quantum field to help support their businesses.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It was enlightening.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rose.
Thanks.